What's going on, gamers? Welcome back to Beyond the Games. Let's talk about this little clip right here where Anthem game director Mark Dara explains why Mass Effect Andromeda shit the bed.
Do you think Mass Effect Andromeda got a fair shake?
No.
Why not?
I think it came out in a really busy window of RPGs, perhaps the busiest window in the history of the games industry, where 5 RPGs launched in the same month.
Can you shorten that up at all?
How about it came out the same month as Zelda?
Boy, if you don't... This seems like a massive misunderstanding of what caused the game to flop. Mass Effect did not fail because of its tight release date. Let's point out that 4 major games are releasing right alongside Anthem on February 22nd, 2018. 3 of which are action-adventure games, so BioWare must not have learned from the past if that's really what they think was their mistake. Let's also point out that the same thing happened to Titanfall 2, a true victim of poor release scheduling. Their FPS released right in between Call of Duty and Battlefield. We all knew that that game was going to be doomed, but even though their game did not sell, the developer is still here making new games and supporting past ones, while BioWare Montreal is dead and buried. Why is that? They were both EA developers, and Mass Effect was clearly a much more successful franchise. This game did not bomb by any means either. Mass Effect Andromeda reportedly sold 5 to 6 million copies on release, and EA itself considered the game a financial success in all of its earning calls. So what killed Mass Effect? Well, let's talk about its rocky development. Months before the game even released, news began to surface that showed a trouble at BioWare was brewing. Left and right, senior staff began leaving the project, a sure sign of a troubled development cycle. Then, ex-developers were being bashed for racist comments, bringing negative attention to the game, and when trailers for the game released and everyone saw how poor the animations of a AAA title were, developers who weren't even a part of the project were being banned. The final nail in the coffin was the game's release delay, which was a definite sign that this game was in trouble. Last year, we finally got word of what exactly happened in BioWare from a Kotaku article titled "The Story Behind Mass Effect Andromeda's Troubled 5-Year Development." And in this article, Jason Schreier brought to light a lot more issues that were occurring in the studio. He spoke with about 12 different developers who worked on the title, who said the development of Andromeda was turbulent and troubled, marred by a director change, multiple major rescopes, an understaffed animation team, technological challenges, communication issues, office politics, a compressed timeline, and brutal crunch. Many games share some of these problems, but to those who worked on it, Andromeda felt unusually difficult. This was a game with ambitious goals, but limited resources, and in some ways, it's miraculous that BioWare shipped it at all. This type of pain the developers felt mostly came from the difficult time that they had trying to get the Frostbite engine to work for their game. Frostbite is widely known as one of the most powerful and most challenging game engines in the industry. Mass Effect Andromeda and Dragon Age Inquisition were the first RPGs to use this engine. They were both developed simultaneously and both had problems getting the engine to fit the form of their game. One quote from this article comes from one top developer on Andromeda's team, and he described it like a car. Epic's Unreal Engine is like an SUV, capable of doing lots of things but unable to go crazy high speeds. The Unity engine would be a compact car, small, weak, and easy to fit in any place you'd like. Frostbite is a sports car, not even a sports car, a Formula One. When it does something well, it does it extremely well. When it doesn't do something, it really doesn't do something. Developers on the team described the project as painful, saying the pain started with Dragon Age Inquisition and continued on with Andromeda as well. And when your team would describe their job as painful, obviously they're not going to produce the top quality content that you want. Frostbite is the biggest reason the animations of Mass Effect Andromeda looked so bad as well, since the engine doesn't ship with an animation system. It wasn't made for RPGs, and if EA had realized what they were doing and understood the industry that they're creating products for, maybe they'd be more successful at making things that are higher quality. Instead, BioWare was forced to work with a difficult engine and spend too much time building out a system that would never work for them. BioWare also had grand plans for the game, like No Man's Sky style procedurally generated planets and spaceflight mechanics that just sounds amazing to play. I mean, come on. But the systems would prove too difficult to build out and get functioning, and when they finally did function, the team had a difficult time making it work in a way that was fun. No Man's Sky's biggest issue was generating planets that were unique in an interesting way, and apparently BioWare hit this same issue because they eventually scrapped the entire system. Spending this much time on a game system and scrapping it is never a good thing because you've essentially just flushed a ton of resources down the drain. While this is not uncommon for a game to have scrapped content, it is uncommon for a game to scrap the first 3 years worth of developed content and start from scratch. This is what crushed Andromeda and caused the majority of its technology problems, which is the biggest reason people who finally played the game after launch complained and stopped playing. The game was just a mess of bugs and poor animation that was the result of poor planning and using technology incorrectly. But the writing was just as bad, and that was impacted just as heavily when BioWare decided to scrap much of Andromeda's content. The writing team had only 2 years to fully write and flesh out characters and plot lines and motivations and all of that stuff that needs to be in a good story. 2 years! Now, if you gave me 2 years to write an essay, I bet I'd have a pretty darn good essay, but we're talking about a AAA video game title with main quests and side quests and multiple endings. This is not enough time to execute a compelling story with all of those boxes to check. The root cause of this was simple. The writing team spent just too much time having too many discussions about the high-level direction. They knew where they were going, they just didn't know how they were going to get there yet, which is, again, typical of game development. It just took them too long to realize they were still missing too much of the story and needed to flesh out some of the more basic beginnings of their plot. The biggest problem with starting from scratch too late in the development cycle is the sheer amount of work there is to do in this short period of time. In this article, it is brought up several times that the last year and a half of Andromeda was the worst crunch they have ever faced. Crunch time is when a development studio really buckles down and hammers out whatever is left to finish. This happens in every single game that's out there. We cover Fortnite, we cover Destiny, we cover Anthem. They're all about to experience a crunch time once they're reaching the last 2 years of their game. Some said what made the crunch worse than previous Mass Effect games was what the developers called regression. On a typical video game project, the last few months are devoted to polish, a phase of the game in which the developers can fix bugs, fine-tune mechanics, and improve existing content to make everything feel as smooth as possible. In the final months of many games that turned out to be good, developers say that the game gets markedly better in the short final stretch. On Andromeda, however, everything just kept regressing. We'll put something together and it's been bug tested and signed off and approved. We'd say, okay, we can now move on from that to the next thing. And while our backs are turned, what we just put together falls apart.
There's like white, there's like only white in the lens once. Whoa. There's what? Oh, whoa. You broke it. Whoa. What in the world?
One developer says that for the last few months of the game, we spent most of our effort just trying to keep it together rather than polishing, just trying to stay ahead of how quickly it was falling apart. This is another reason why Mass Effect Andromeda failed, because it was plagued with bugs at nearly every corner of the game. Had the studio been given enough time to hammer out a few of those bugs under a normal crunch period, the game would have been in much better shape. Andromeda was a huge mess, and because of the challenges they faced with technology and writing, the game shipped in a pretty poor state. And once people finally got their hands on the game, the public opinion quickly became that of disappointment. And it's really hard to come back from that, because once again, this game sold 5 to 6 million copies worldwide. So it was not a flop at all, it just was bad. And everyone who got the game knew it was bad and was vocal about it. The reviews on the game tore it to shreds, having little positive notes on it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why the game failed. Not because of its release window, okay, but because the game was bad, and everyone who bought it played it and said, meh, and returned it. Why is it so important that EA accepts responsibility for their mistake? Because we really don't want them to make the mistake a second time. Anthem is right around the corner, and they need to know that Mass Effect Andromeda could have been a giant just like the 3 titles before it if it had been a better game. But it wasn't, so people didn't spend their money on it, which is the proper response. Andromeda got a fair shot, just like all of the other games that released in that window. It's just the other games that released were better products, and Mass Effect Andromeda had too many bugs and too much negative press surrounding it to survive.
Can you do that? You can do that. That's because of the ice. That's actually pretty cool. I expect something bad is going to happen.
He drills into bugs.
Oh, maybe he's... Holy shit, what the hell? What is going on? Holy fuck.
Oh,
You could destroy this game. Oh my god! Shit. This is amazing. It better end. It better explode. I'm gonna do this as soon as I get home and play it.
That is my time for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like down below to let me know if you did. And if you're new to the channel, I really hope you can join our community by subscribing and hitting the bell icon to make sure you don't miss any more future content. Once again, my name is KillerB61. Have a great day, gamers, and I will see you in the next one.